Order. I'd like to ask all phones and beepers, if you have any, to please silence them. Good evening. This board is comprised of 7 members. 4 members of the board shall constitute a quorum, and the affirmative vote of 4 members shall be necessary for the adoption of any motion. If only 4 members of the board are present, an applicant may request and be entitled to a continuance to the next regularly scheduled meeting of the board. If a matter is continued due to a lack of quorum, the chairperson or secretary of the board may set a special meeting to consider such matter. In the event that 4 votes are not obtained, an applicant may, except in the case of a comprehensive plan amendment, may request a continuance to allow the application to proceed to the City Commission without recommendation. Pursuant to Resolution number 2021-118, the City of Coral Gables has returned to traditional in-person meetings. However, the Planning and Zoning Board has established the ability for the public to provide comments virtually. For those members of the public who are appearing on Zoom and wish to testify, you must be visible to the court reporter to be sworn in. Otherwise, if you speak without being sworn in, your comments may not have evidentiary value. Lobbyist registration and disclosure. Any person who acts as a lobbyist must register with the city clerk as required pursuant to City Code. As chair, I now officially call the City of Coral Gables Planning and Zoning Board meeting of February 20th, 2024 to order. The time is 6:02. Jill, if you please call the roll.
Robert Behar.
Here.
Julio Gabriel.
Here.
Sue Kavalinsky. Here. Mr. Pardo asked to be excused. He's out of town.
Okay.
Javier Salman.
Present.
Chip Withers also asked to be excused. He's out of town.
Correct.
A.B. Eisenstadt.
Here. Notice regarding ex parte communications. Please be advised that this board is a quasi-judicial board which requires board members to disclose all ex parte communication and site visits. An ex parte communication is defined as any contact, communication, conversation, correspondence, memorandum, or other written or verbal communication that takes place outside a public hearing between a member of the public and a member of a quasi-judicial board regarding matters to be heard by the board. If anyone made any contact with a board member regarding an issue before the board member must state on the record the existence of the ex parte communication and the party who originated the communication. Also, if a board member conducted a site visit specifically related to the case before the board member must also disclose such visit. In either case, the board member must state on the record whether the ex parte communication and/or site visit will affect the board member's ability to impartially consider the evidence to be presented regarding the matter. The board member should also state that his or her decision will be based on substantial, competent evidence and testimony presented on the record today. Does any member of the board have such a communication or site visit to disclose at this time? No. I did receive an email from an individual, and I went ahead and forwarded that email to city staff and the council for the record. Swearing in. Everyone who speaks this evening must complete the roster on the podium. We ask that you print clearly so the official records of your name and address will be correct. Now, with the exception of attorneys, all persons physically in the City Commission chambers who will speak on agenda items before us this evening, please rise to be sworn in. Anybody else going to be speaking on any agenda items tonight? Besides attorneys? No? Raise your hand, please. Thank you. Zoom platform participants, I will ask any person wishing to speak on tonight's agenda item to please open your chat and send a direct message to Jill Menendez stating you would like to speak before the board and include your full name. Jill will call you when it's your turn. I ask you to be concise for the interest of time. Phone platform participants. After Zoom platform participants are done, I will ask phone platform participants to comment on tonight's agenda item. I also ask you to be concise for the interest of time. First is the approval of the minutes of January 10th, 2024. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at those? Yes. Is there a motion? Julio made a motion.
I'll second.
We have a second. Any comments? No? Call the roll, please.
Here, yes.
Sue Kavalinsky. Here.
That's
For the
a,
minutes.
yes, I'm sorry.
Yes.
you were following Julio.
Javier Salman,
Sí.
Robert Behar,
Here, yes. Might as well.
A.B. Eisenstadt.
Yes, thank you to all those involved. Procedure that we will use for tonight. Identification of agenda item first by Mr. Caller, presentation by applicant or agent, then presentation by staff. I'll go ahead and open public comment, first in chamber, then Zoom platform, and then phone line platform. Afterwards, I'll go ahead and close the public comment. We'll have board discussion and a motion, discussion and second of motion if necessary. We'll have board's final comments and a vote. Mr. Caller, we have the first agenda item, and I think Mr. Behar will excuse himself for that agenda item.
Yes. I will recuse myself, but
Go.
we may not have to recuse myself. I think the attorney is going to say something on this matter.
Well, if he's seeking a motion to defer, you ought not to be present for that motion. So
Okay,
this
then
would be
I
this for those items, this would be the time where you should remove yourself
Okay,
from
then
it.
I will step outside.
Thank you, sir. Please let the record reflect that Robert Behar has recused himself or excused himself and is going outside. Mr. Caller, would you like to read the first
Well,
item,
if
or how do
there's
you
a
want to proceed?
request for a motion to defer, then we don't need to read the titles in.
Okay.
Hopefully, I can make this simple. Good evening, Mr. Chair, board members. George Navarro with offices at 333 Southeast 2nd Avenue. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. I have my client here with me as well. We obviously, this is a very unique and special project in the southern portion of your downtown. Since June of last year, we've been working intimately with the single-family homeowners that are directly east of us, and we've been able to have a lot of positive discussions. I think this is a project that merits a full board because of the land use amendment request. So with that, I would kindly ask for this item to be deferred. It gives us a little bit more time to speak with some more residents and also have an opportunity to get input from the full board, since I think one of these items requires at least 4 votes to move forward.
Correct. Mr. Caller, question for you. Do we need to take a vote on this, or is it an automatic if they
No,
request it because of the
we
fourth?
would take a vote on it. Are there any objectors in the present? Okay. So yes, we do need to take a formal vote on deferral. This would be deferral of item E1. That's 24-6967. Item E2, 24-6968.
Mr. Caller,
and
if I may.
I'm sorry?
This is, if I may, this is a vote by the board and
I understand.
not the outside
I just
public.
want to appear on the record because Mr. Caller mentioned if there are any objectors. I am an objector who was seeking a deferral as well, so I just want to be noted on the record as
Right.
being present.
Got
My
it.
name is Edward Martos. I'm here on behalf of TFFO LLC, the property owner to the south at 129 Sevilla Avenue.
Thank
That's fine. And in this case, because the rules provide that the applicant is entitled to a deferral, it's not that the objectors could object to a deferral. There are circumstances where objectors might be able to object to a deferral, but in this case, the rules provide that when there's only 4 members, the applicant is entitled to a deferral to the next meeting.
Understood. Jill, call the roll, please.
These are on both items E1, E2, and E3.
To defer.
To defer, wait a minute, let's get a date for the next meeting.
Date certain to the next meeting? So you don't have to
Yeah,
advertise?
to March 13th, I believe, is the next meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
So there will be no further advertising unless the department intends to advertise anyway. So, but we're announcing the date now. What was it, March 13th?
March 13, 2024,
Right, at our normal time.
6 PM. Thank you.
It's in the bottom of the agenda. It states the next board meeting date.
Very good.
Thank you. Call the roll,
Yes, we
please.
need a motion. There is a motion, isn't there? Have we had a motion?
No, we haven't had a motion.
Oh, we haven't had a motion.
I would like to make a motion that we accept the applicant's request for deferral and defer this item to March 13th at 6 p.m. And that's it.
I second.
Sue went ahead and second. Call the roll, please.
Julio Gabriel,
Yes.
Sue Kavalinsky,
Yes.
Javier Salman,
Yes.
A.B. Eisenstadt.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We look forward to coming back to you in March and presenting our project.
Thank
Thank
you. Would you ask Robert to come back in, please? Thank you. Or not.
Sure, please, for the record. Thank you so much.
So everybody that is in chambers for item E1, E2, and E3, just want to let everybody know that it has been deferred to March 13th. Just want to make sure Robert comes in before we read the next item so he can vote on it.
See.
No,
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Please let the record reflect that Robert Behar is back in chambers. Mr. Caller, if you please read E4.
Sure. Item E4, an ordinance of the City Commission providing for a text amendment to the City of Coral Gables official zoning code, creating section 5-314, windows and hurricane shutters, to regulate the closure of window and hurricane shutters and amending the city code, Chapter 1, General Provisions, Section 1-7, entitled Penalties, to provide a penalty for the closure of window and hurricane shutters outside of the hurricane season, providing severability clause, repealer provision, codification, providing an effective date. Item E4, public hearing.
So Jennifer Garcia, City Planner. This was approved at first reading earlier in January by the City Commission. It's being sponsored by a commissioner.
If I may,
Sorry,
does Jennifer need to state an address, or is she okay?
No, she's,
I'm staff.
City planner, okay.
yeah. She's sworn in too.
Yes.
So the intent of this is to limit the time of the year that you can put on window shutters or any kind of closure to your windows to only occur during the hurricane season, which is between June 1st and November 30th. If there's a time during outside of that window that someone has enclosures on their window, they'll be issued a 30-day warning by code enforcement and hopefully not incur too many fines after that 30-day warning. So if you go to page 2 of your staff report, those are the 3 sentences that we're adding to Article 5 in regards to window hurricane shutters.
Okay.
Any questions?
Are you, Sue?
And this is for all kinds of enclosures, like clear plastic, metal,
Yes.
everything, right? I was a little confused when I first read your staff report because it said properties with closed windows or hurricane shutters. And I was a little worried about that language because everyone closes their windows, but you're talking about the covering over the
Yes,
windows.
the closure of the window.
Oh, okay, I just
Right.
wanted to make sure. It does clarify that in the actual item title. So is this all around the house we're talking about? You can't have any enclosures
Yes.
all around the house?
correct.
Okay. I would have, I have some comments about that. I used to, before I had hurricane impact glass windows, I used to have accordions on my French doors all across the back of my house. And I would go on vacation, and I would close them and lock them for security. Because of Robert came, I memean, that's added protection for me. You couldn't see them from the front or the sides. They were in the back. And I've got, a 16-foot hedge in the back. Even my back door neighbors couldn't see them. So I have no issue as long as they can't be seen from the street. I have no issue with them being around the house. It's just added protection from theft. And from what I hear from next door, there's a lot of theft going on. So if I'm one of those people that doesn't have impact windows, has accordion shutters, I want as much protection as possible if I'm on vacation.
Right. So the intent of this is for aesthetics reasons. Maybe we should clarify that and talk with the sponsoring commissioner if that's more the concern is just what are seen from the street. So the back maybe will be okay. But we can talk to him about that.
What I'd like to do is just find out if we have anybody open it up for public comment, because there may not be that many people. Jill, do we have Anybody here for public comment in chambers?
No,
Anybody on Zoom?
no.
Anybody on the phone platform? Okay, at this time, I'd like to go ahead and close it for public comment. Sue, please continue.
My point, if the board feels that there's a concern for security and you want to incorporate a recommendation to the commission, that's obviously one of your roles as a planning and zoning board member.
Understood.
Okay, and that's one thing that I would recommend. It's just added protection.
Yes, Sue, this is a very special day. You and I are going to agree on something.
Oh, my God. What day is this? Let's write this down.
You know, I agree with you 100%. If it's not visible from the street and you don't have impact windows, I don't see why not. We were on vacation, and I have impact windows, and the police came because my neighbor called. They were trying to break in through my house through the back. So luckily we had impact glass, and also they was not able to get in. They tried to break the glass, but they never got in. But I think you're absolutely right. If you have a condition where you don't have hurricane, windows and door, but you should be able to allow, as long as not visible from the street.
Let me ask you a question, both of you. What happens in a case where a neighbor leaves up their shutter on the side of the house or in an area where it's very visible from a neighbor? And the neighbor has an issue with it. How do you treat that? How would you treat that situation? I understand for security and I'm all for it. But what happens, not somebody that works on it when they leave town and they want to have security, but somebody that says it's not visible from the street, but yet my neighbor to my left, my neighbor behind and so forth can see that shutter?
Look, when I used to go on vacation, I used to notify the police department to have more
Patrols.
control, patrols around the area. Maybe if that's a way that if you're gonna go and you wanna put the shutters up or the accordions, whatever it is, if you notify, I don't know, but to give the flexibility, the ability to the homeowner to provide that extra protection.
Yeah, and like Robert said, as long as it's not visible from the street, because it sounds to me like this is an overall aesthetic issue, not a neighbor-to-neighbor issue. It's like when you're driving down the street, what do you see? And I believe that as long as it's not seen from the street, which means in the back and the sides is perfectly okay with me. I mean, I haven't seen really any ugly shutters. There are people in my neighborhood that have the clear glass, and they keep the clear plastic, whatever it is, and they keep it up all year. It's not offensive at all.
But you do see, if you see it from your neighbors, that means you see it from the street?
No, they keep it on the sides.
But do you see it from the street when you're driving by?
No.
Okay.
And one thing is to put, use a radical example, plywood, that's not, but if you do have the accordion,
And plus, if it's Miami-Dade County approved shutter, you can't put plywood up because that's not an approved form of shutter in Miami-Dade County. It has to be an approved shutter system. So that means whether it be the aluminum panels, whether it be the clear plastic, to me, it's not offensive, especially if it's not seen from the street.
To me, the key there would be not visible from the street.
Right.
Okay. I don't know how the other board members.
Javier?
In complete agreement with my board partner, Sue, over here.
Wow.
And as long as the keyword not visible from the
Unanimous.
And your agreement with this other board member as well?
street. Never. Not yet. Julio, yes, you know.
Julio?
Don't put that on the record, please.
Any comments, Julio? No. I guess it sounds like I'm the only one that has a qualm about it, and I agree with when you go on vacation, but I have seen instances where people leave certain side windows that they may not use all the time with shutters, and those shutters rust, and neighbors see that. So I just don't know how to deal with that, because then you can't go to them and say, can you take it down? Code enforcement can't go there and say, can you take it down? Because they'll say, well, it's not visible from the street. Although my neighbor to my south sees it and my back neighbor sees it.
Do you think that's typical or a one-off?
No, I don't think it's very typical at all, but I think you either deal with the situation or you don't. So, or unless you put some kind of language that if it's, rusting or the appearance or like a building or a home that's not painted well, something like that. I'd be
Okay, yeah, but I'd hate to penalize the majority for the one-off.
I actually find this to be, from a resident point of view, particularly heinous on condominiums, where I see them on the balcony windows and those closed in.
Can we speak into the
I'm
mic
sorry.
because the,
I particularly don't like it when I see it on condominiums. And this this ordinance would address that in condominiums, correct? Because we're talking about any
yes.
windows that are, and as long as they're visible from the street, they can't have, outside of the period of emergency, their shutters up, which is fine with me. I think that's great. But only for the ones that are visible from the street.
But by putting visible from the street, you're limiting to practically single family. Because the condominiums, you will see it from the street.
Yeah, you can.
You will see it, so you can't do it there.
You can't do it there either.
But if we said, if you put a recommendation to commission that, you are only allowed to do it if it's not visible from the street, you're gonna limit to single family and practically the side and the backyard only. Right?
Yeah.
So I guess we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
The
It's
condominium,
hard to agree with me, and I'm going to say it's okay.
no, you're not going to agree with me. So I think we both, Sue and I agree that if it's not visible, in the case that you mentioned, the condominiums, you can have it because they're going to be visible from the street. Automatically, they don't qualify to do it. Right?
No, they would be enforced upon. Yes, we agree.
Okay.
Can we add some type of language or some kind of recommendation to it? The same as a home that has the paint peeling or the roof that's bad, that code enforcement goes there, whether it's visible or not, that can tell them, you got to clean it and so forth, or you got to paint it, or you got to do something to those shutters, even if they're in the back?
And let me ask one question to our city attorney. Can we say that if the homeowner, the property owner, gets, I don't know, notifies the city, the police department or something, that will create an exception for them to do it, something that is not, because, yeah, you could have it year round and not get rid of it, even though it's in the back. And I understand, I'm thinking about your neighbor. I used to have my neighbors, they were probably in the 80s, and he kept the windows front next, visible from my house out all the time. I would help him put them up. I would try to help him take them down, but sometimes, no, Robert, leave them there. And it didn't bother me, but I could see where it was constantly, up.
I just think there's a lot of two-story homes next to a one-story home throughout our city. And when people have their rooms or bedrooms or whatever it is on the second floor, and they're looking at a property or a home that's a next-door neighbor that is on a first story that is constantly shuttered, and it may not be I'm not talking about when they leave, I'm talking about one window for some reason that's a garage window. So it's not a window that they use, it's not a window they go to, and so they left up the shutters, and now that shutter starts rusting. That, to me, is an issue. Because now you can't go to them and say, your neighbor behind has complained, you got to take down this shutter. The way it's being presented, that neighbor can say, well, I'm complying with the code.
Well, maybe there is some language we can insert
Just,
regarding unsightliness or the condition of the
Correct.
material.
that would be my only thing.
We can insert the words properly maintained.
Yeah.
Or leave it up to staff to add whatever language they deem would be correct, same as with care of a property, a house, a roof. So so it coincides. In other words, from the street, you can't do it if it's visible, understood. But if it's in the back and there's a complaint from a neighbor that says, this person has had theirs up for the last 10 years, I've been seeing this shutter, and it's rusting, and it's dripping over the wall and so forth, there should be a remedy, there should be something not.
Well, I like properly maintained because, for example, if some of those screws come out, and it could be a perfect panel, but the screws come out and they're flapping in the wind, yes,
Properly maintained and in good order.
or installed properly
working order.
maintained. and-
Working order.
Yeah,
I'd be good with that.
okay.
Would anybody like to make a recommendation? Sue?
Laptop was very good at the language.
I'm gonna follow your, today's a special.
Sue, this is a special day with that pink bicycle on the lapel.
I make a motion to amend or recommend amending this proposed ordinance whereby, help me out here.
To,
It'd be
You
limited to windows only visible.
I have a thought,
Yes,
provided that shutters in the rear or side parts of the home that cannot be viewed from the street are permitted. Do you want to have a time limit on it?
you know what, I think I'd put it in reverse. I'd make it that you can't, these things can't be seen from the street, okay? I think that should be the first thing. They can't be seen from the street. However, shutters may be kept up on the sides and the rear of the house if they're properly maintained and
In good working order.
in good working order.
and not visible from the street.
Well, we said that at the beginning. They cannot be visible from the street.
Now, do you put, if I'm going vacation, do I put maybe 30, if code enforcement goes around and sees it, and 30 days after notification from code enforcement?
Yeah, because there's something like that already in this language, right? About the 30-day.
Okay, so if a neighbor complains because the shutters are up and haven't been taken down, and code enforcement goes, that homeowner has 30 days. If you're on vacation more than 30 days, so can that be done? You already have language similar to that.
Yeah, I saw it in here.
Yeah, subsection B, properties with closed windows or hurricane shutters outside of hurricane season will be given a 30-day warning before any further enforcement action.
So we
But
keep
what,
that
what,
language
what
in.
you're doing here is you're actually permitting, you're creating an exception to this rule. The rule is you can have hurricane shutters during the hurricane season, but after that, you have to take them down. You're creating an exception to allow for these shutters at other times, as long as these shutters are not visible from the street. Is that correct? And that the shutters that are up are in good order and properly maintained. That's what you're doing. Now, somebody could keep them up 365 under that.
No, but if you have a time limitation.
Well, there's a time limitation. If you get a warning, you get 30 days. Now, if you want to have a time limitation, say outside of the hurricane period, you are permitted to have shutters for a maximum of 30 days as long as those shutters are not visible from the street and that those shutters that are up are in good order and properly maintained. So you have three qualifications, right? Not visible from the street, properly maintained in good order, and a maximum of 30 days outside the hurricane period.
Perfect.
Okay. So that's basically the amended
Your
motion.
issue too.
That does.
Yeah.
So we have a motion.
I'll second that.
We have a second by Robert. Any other discussion? No? Call the roll, please.
Yes.
Here, yes.
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 ABI Assistant.
Yes. The next item is E5.
We asked if there were no objectors. Did we ask if there were any objectors? Of course, there's nobody in the room.
I
Let
went
the
ahead and
record
asked for
reflect.
public
You did,
comment
yes.
on all three platforms,
Yes.
and then I closed it.
Okay, very good. Item E5, an ordinance of the City Commission providing for text amendments to the City of Coral Gables official zoning code, amending Article 1, General Provisions, Section 1-104, Jurisdiction and Applicability, amending provisions for the siting of city facilities to include facilities for workforce housing that are owned, financed, or operated by the city, the county, or other public governmental entity as required by the Code of Miami-Dade County, Section 33-193.7, applicability in the incorporated and unincorporated areas, minimum standards exemptions, providing for repeal of provision, severability clause, codification, providing for an effective date, item E5, public hearing.
Thank you.
Jennifer Garcia, planning official. So the Miami-Dade County is requiring every municipality within its jurisdiction within the Miami-Dade County area to provide some kind of expedited review process for any workforce housing that is owned, financed, or operated by the county, municipality, or other public government entity. So as a reaction to that, staff prepared some amendments to be able to comply with that requirement at the county level. So if you go to page 2, you can see that there's a new sentence embedded into our already expedited review process for city facilities. So facility is part of that process.
Okay.
Any questions?
Would you like to read it for the record? So
Oh, the addition? Yeah. So in section 1-104, subsection C, 1, the addition is, it is further provided that in addition to city facilities listed in this subsection, the procedures set forth herein shall also apply to applications for workforce housing as that term is defined in Article, in the Miami-Dade County, for qualifying residential developments that are owned, financed, or operated by the county, city, or other public entity.
So I could give a little bit of background on this. The city created a government facilities hearing similar to what the county has for its government facilities and provided for an expedited process. The county has dictated to all the municipalities that they need to have an expedited process in their code. You've heard of state mandates, like housing that's occurred. Well, this is a county mandate. So this is the city complying with the county's mandate to municipalities to provide this expedited process for this relatively narrow area.
Is this at all tied to SB 102?
No, it is separate and apart from that.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like the same process, except this goes directly to the commission. The SB 102 goes directly to the city manager.
Right, well, this requires a public hearing, whereas I believe that I don't know what's going on in the legislature this year, who knows? But whereas the other one is supposed to be through an administrative process. But this is still a public hearing process.
So that's the only difference, really. So in the city of Coral Gables, the Biltmore would apply, right? It's a city-owned facility. The youth center would apply.
No, but it has to be workforce housing.
I'm saying,
If they were to do
I'm
workforce
saying,
housing.
if a developer came along and said, City of Coral Gables, I'm going to pay you $150 billion for the right to take over the Biltmore and make it workforce housing. Okay? So that 5 commissioners, elected officials, could say, sure, right? Without us hearing that. Okay? They could take over the Biltmore if somebody waves money in their faces. They could take over the youth center. They
I don't
could
think
take
it has-
over any one of
I
our
don't-
public facilities, right?
don't
It has to
see
be
that.
the correct zoning. This isn't trumping zoning or land use.
It is not zoned for that. There's a lot of different,
But this says it bypasses all zoning and this is what it says.
Procedures,
Yeah,
but not like for a review process. It would have to go through planning and zoning, through 2 readings with the commission.
okay, so,
Oh, but it also would have to be owned, operated, or financed by the city.
Right.
So a private developer that goes and buys the Biltmore to have workforce housing,
I'm not saying buying, I'm saying leasing. I'm
Well,
saying the
even-
developer could say, we want to lease the Biltmore, right, for $1 billion, and we're
I
going to
don't
give you.
think that would be viewed as owned, financed, or operated by the city, the county, or other public government. I'm not sure it would meet that requirement.
Well, I
Because
mean,
it's essentially a private company that's operating it.
well, it's operating, not owning it.
but
city
the
would
city's
still
not
own it.
asking for financing.
It doesn't have to. The city owns it. Does the city own the Biltmore?
Yes.
Okay, then the Biltmore applies.
I presume that if the city wanted to operate workforce housing in the Biltmore, they might consider it a government facility, and yes, they could go through that process.
But the city doesn't even have to agree to operate it. The city could abdicate operation to a developer.
I mean,
City
they
just
could
has to
hire
own it.
maybe an operator
Pardon
to
me?
do it. It would be the city's facility, but I suppose they might be able to hire a private company to operate the workforce housing on their behalf. That would be true.
So I'm reading this and I'm going, oh my gosh, I mean, maybe not today, but what about in 5, 10 years? And what if the city is broke in 10 years and $1 billion comes waving in our faces from a developer who says, I want to lease that property, the Biltmore. I'm going to build on that property in addition to what's already there and for workforce housing. I mean, this doesn't prevent any of that from happening. In fact, it almost kind of like opens the door for that to happen.
They have to comply with the underlying zoning and land use.
Pardon?
The underlying zoning would control that you can't have residential units on that zoning. It's zone special use, for your example.
Oh, okay.
They had to
well,
change the zoning and go
Yeah,
through
we'll
the
have to
public
come
hearing
for a change of
process.
zoning.
Yeah, I mean, the change in land use and comp and all could happen before this board, and we could say no, or we're not here, somebody else is here, and they say sure, yes, and all of a sudden the Biltmore becomes workforce
Wouldn't
housing.
that happen? Okay, if somebody wanted to do that hypothetically, I'm taking your hypothetical example, somebody wanted to do that, couldn't they come now and do it without any of this going through or not going through?
Actually, that's true.
I mean,
If it's going to be a government facility, and it's an exception to zoning, but it's not, it still has to comply with the comprehensive plan. So I don't know what the comprehensive plan is for the Biltmore. I don't know if workforce housing would be consistent with the comprehensive plan for the Biltmore. But it would have to comply with the comprehensive plan. But yes, you're right. If it were consistent with the comprehensive plan, I suppose the city that could do it. Of course, there's all kinds of contractual and issues. Practically, it couldn't
Yeah,
be
I mean,
done.
it's a hypothetical, but look what's happening these days with everything else happening in this country and the world. This could happen. And we're going to say, yeah, sure, okay, no problem. It's
Yeah,
never
but
going to happen.
Sue, that's a very hypothetical. I mean, anything's possible, yeah. I mean, I made,
I think the city is trying to come in compliance with the county's requirements.
Let me
It's
ask you
not,
something.
might not be what you would recommend. It's not that the city is the one that's originating this. This is originating by the county, is exercising its home rule authority and provide that all the cities provide this workforce housing, basically expedited review.
Let
It
me
still
ask
has
you
to go to
something.
public hearing, though.
Let me ask you something. Why doesn't the city of Coral Gables reject this? What do we lose?
Well, I don't know what the ramifications would be if we don't comply with the county's requirements.
I'm sure there's some
I mean, it's
penalties or something that that will be affect the city of Coral Gables. I mean, I can see maybe that, saying yes, provided that all underlying zoning are consistent, that, the process, I mean, it says no, but I don't see it in this case where it would be, I don't see what you're saying being valid here, because there are so many check and balances to do this by the city that,
I think there's a difference, though, between what the state is doing for workforce housing. Basically, they're saying, you got to do it. They're not even giving the governing body some discretion on whether something should happen or not happen. This is just providing a process. It's still ultimately the authority of the city commission and whether they're going to approve this or not. So that's really a big difference. Ultimately, it's the governing body that's going to make a decision whether they're going to approve this government facility or not. So that's really the difference. Whereas in the case of the state, some private individual wants to build a 14-story building next to single-family homes. If it's within a mile of the height is within a mile, that's very different from what this is. And indeed, the criteria in here, I believe, as I recall, is they look to compatibility. So is this government facility going to be compatible? So I think it's a completely different.
And I'm not saying they're exactly the same. I'm just saying that the municipalities are being usurped by higher levels of government. We are being told what to do.
And I think that's
In other words, we are
unfortunate.
losing our identity and our authority and our ability to say no.
I couldn't agree with you more. And that's what's happening at the state legislature as well. They are usurping the local authorities' decision-making process. Couldn't agree with you more. However, at least in this case, the ultimate buck stops at the city commission.
Well, I know, and that worries me. It does. Because, I mean, one day, we're going to have a city commission that all agrees with one special interest, and then we're done.
But,
Then
Sue,
the
let me
youth
ask you-
center will turn into,
But can't the city commission, even if the city commission today votes one way, can't the future city commission overturn whatever is written there? I'll give you an example, covenants to run with the land. I have always seen the city of Coral Gables not allow lot splits when certain factors are in place, such as a wall running through the house, running through land, whatever it is. But I have also seen where the city undoes the covenant to run with the land, which is in the property, to allow the property to be separated. So why wouldn't the commission be able to undo or change a code?
well, here's why. Okay, so I'm a developer. I make a deal with the 5 commissioners to turn the youth center into whatever it's designated under the current zoning code, or maybe they come before us and it changes. So all of a sudden, they make a lot of rooms at the youth center specifically for workforce housing, and then a new commission comes in and says, we don't like that. You have to undo all those rooms at the youth center. Then won't a law come about saying, well, you can't undo that thing because those people already invested the money in building rooms into the youth center. I'm telling you, this is the head of the snake. And the nose of the camel. I'm just saying.
I don't see it that
I do
way.
not like, and I think we need to take this seriously. I don't like the fact that we are being told what to do, and our hands will forever be tied. I think if we can somehow amend this, to soften this, to eliminate some of the whatever, but as a whole, as this sits right now, this is very dangerous.
I don't see it so dangerous, in my opinion. And I'm not sure that we could tell the county we're not gonna accept it. I don't know if really we have, I mean, not us, the city commissioners, at the end who's gonna approve this or not, because we could recommend something to them and they're gonna, I don't know if they have, for lack of a better word, the authority to say, sorry, county, we're not gonna accept this.
But look at SB 102. They passed this law. There were enough municipalities that said, and now they changed parts of it. I know I know they didn't change. They didn't change a lot, but they started to chip away at it. And according to our state senator, she said she's going to continue the process of chipping away at it. She's the one that introduced it. She should never have introduced it, in my opinion. And now she's hearing enough from municipalities where she's going to start changing it and watering it down. So I'm just saying, can we say, forget it, county? We're not going to, no, we probably can't do that, but we can certainly make recommendations saying you have to carve us out in these circumstances. Look, if we say yes, and we can never go back. If this board says, let's make some carve-outs to this. Let's be smart about this for the future. Let's make some carve-outs in this. And I don't think we should make them right now. I think we should really study this and find out how we can soften this.
Let me ask.
Well, I have a thought, actually. So, to be a little creative.
Wait, what is the
So-
consensus of the city commission on this? I'm just
Right.
curious.
Yeah. So
Have they
don't-
seen it?
Yeah, I don't think it's
Have they
been
seen it?
I don't think it's been on their agenda.
No, it passed for first reading.
Oh, it
in
did?
January.
How did it pass?
Unanimously.
Unanimous? You know what? Then maybe they didn't take the time to read this because just read it.
Well, one of the thought I have is when treating it as a government facility, it's an exception to zoning, but you have to comply with the comprehensive plan. You can't accept from the comprehensive plan. So we could say, require that notwithstanding that workforce housing has to meet both zoning and the comprehensive plan as
Okay.
an exception. So that would mean that we're going to treat the workforce housing as from other facilities by either the county, we're still providing the expedited process, but if it's a county facility or other public entity, they have to comply with both zoning and the comprehensive plan. So that weakens it a little bit.
No, we can say a lot. I mean, then at that point, there's limited properties owned by the city. I mean, one that comes to mind is a fire station on US 1.
Right.
That probably meets the comprehensive plan, even though it's a city owned facility, but it rules out the Billmore, rules out the youth center. I don't know how many other, the police station.
But my suggestion is with regard to other facilities other than the city's own facility, that they have to comply with the zoning code and the comprehensive plan. They have to, everybody's got to comply with the comprehensive plan. There's an exception for zoning, but one way to weaken this is to require that other facilities, not Coral Gables facilities, but other facilities have to meet the zoning code.
But what other facilities?
Well,
It's
let's
not
say,
city-owned.
right, let's say the county finds a vacant piece of property in Coral Gables, and they want to build a workforce housing. Let's say the zoning for that area is single-family residential. So that the county couldn't do that because we're requiring that you can't build workforce housing in single-family residential. I guess you could have single-family workforce housing, couldn't you?
I mean, you've got the
That's true.
courthouse, the county owns the courthouse, that's a prime example, it's not us, it's them, they can build whatever they want there, right?
No, that's privately owned. It's not public. It's leased to
Oh, it's leased? I
Yes,
thought it
it's
was county
privately
owned.
owned.
How does it work with the school district?
Well, it would be considered a public, how does the school district work?
Yeah, in other words,
Well, I
what's
think there's
between
there-
cities and
there's
zoning?
there's some lack of clarity on whose authority controls on the school.
School board controls their own property, period, end of story.
And it's
And
happening,
unless they transfer the property to the county to make this property then viable for development by the county as a government agency, it would have to be the school board submitting for public housing.
Well, I think we've had issues with schools in Coral Gables and requirements that we ask them to meet, so.
I've done a lot of schools, I can tell you.
Right.
The school
Well,
board
there's
owns
a
all their
SRF,
schools.
yes.
And they come,
Not the county, it's the school board.
and they come, even the Board of Architects, they come as a courtesy. They don't even have to.
They don't
come
have to,
the Board of
they're
Architects.
completely autonomous, they have their own building department, they can do whatever they want on any property.
We should be like that.
we
Jennifer,
agree.
I've got a question for you. Is there any other municipality of the 34 municipalities that is balking at this or also making carve-outs in there?
Not to my knowledge, because I think this was adopted a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we're a little late.
Yeah,
Okay, so no other municipality has
not to our knowledge.
changed this? We're sure.
Not to my knowledge. There may be some that we are not familiar with.
I have a question for the chair. To Jill, when it says financing, is there a percentage of financing that triggers this, or does it have to be 100%
Doesn't
financed?
specify.
That's an interesting issue. It's a very interesting issue. Because I've done low-income housing and elderly low-income housing where the financing is through a government agency, and they would qualify then for an expedited review. But we'd still have to meet zoning and comprehensive land use. That's still on the table. That's never going to go away, right?
Right.
So it's interesting because you could have a private developer who has a portion of government financing as part of the package. Because a lot of times in bigger developers, they have a package of financing, some from private investors, some from banks, and then maybe a governmental portion if there's a workforce housing included. And you see that up north a lot, where you have multiple agencies working together with private, in a public-private venture to develop a project.
But isn't that a
Would those
private
projects then
developer?
be entitled to an expedited review?
I mean, we can verify again what the county code says exactly, but I don't remember there ever being any kind of percentage.
But Javier, in your case, isn't that a private developer who's doing those developments?
Yeah, but it's government financing. And financing is one of the triggers.
Yes.
So I understand it. It's not just government agencies, it could be government financing.
Yeah, you know what? I have to tell you, there's so much in here that we don't know about. I feel very uncomfortable moving forward with any kind of vote on this. We don't know enough about this. I mean, it seems like, well, everybody else is doing it, why don't we just do it? But I'm telling you, we have a lot of valuable property here. We have we have to protect our city. And I just don't feel that,
Well, actually, before we proceed, let me ask Jill. Jill, do we have anybody in chambers that wishes to speak on this?
No,
Anybody on Zoom?
no,
Anybody in the phone platform?
no.
Okay, so let me just close it for public comment and then let's proceed.
Okay.
okay. But I just feel uncomfortable in even moving forward with any part of this. And I'm not an expert on, like some of you up here on the ins and outs, but all I can tell you from just a common person's reading of this doesn't sound good. I mean, there's so many loopholes and so many things we don't know about. And I just don't want to give away the baby,
Julio?
I think us as a society are all moving towards making it easy to get workforce housing in our communities. And I think we stay behind the times if we don't do it. The county is pushing us to do it. I understand all the wherewithal, but if we worry about what can happen, we'll never get anything done. I would like to move to approve this as it is.
As it is, or with the recommendations for zoning and so forth that Craig went ahead and?
Well, it wasn't my recommendation. I
No,
was
but
trying
it was,
One of the members was saying, is there anything we can do to soften it? The way this is worded, government facilities in Coral Gables, it's specifically drafted that it is an exception to zoning. It is not exception to the comprehensive plan. This addition could be clarified to say, with respect to workforce housing, requires compliance, still goes through the expedited process, but is required to meet both zoning and the comprehensive plan. That was my suggestion if you wanted to soften it.
I will amend it.
Yeah, in an effort to try to, follow some of those concerns, I would feel more comfortable if I was to support this with those provisions.
So Robert, would you second Julio?
With the amendment, I would second it.
So we have a motion with the amendment and a second. Any discussion? No? Call the roll, please.
Javier Salmon,
No.
Zucker Walensky,
No.
Julio Gabriel,
Yes.
Robert Behar,
Yes.
A.B. Eisenstadt.
Yes.
Okay, it goes forward then without a recommendation.
Correct.
Through the chair, before we adjourn, I have a quick question for our esteemed planning director. When notices go out for items that come before this board, specifically projects and whatnot, when do they go out timing-wise with regards to the actual meeting? Isn't it 2 weeks before?
13 days.
13 days? Close to 2 weeks, okay. Is there any way or any reason why we as members of the board don't get a notification?
I guess because the zoning code doesn't require it,
Okay.
unless you're within 1,000
There's
feet.
no, there's
or
no
50
other,
feet.
there's no staff objection to us being notified, right?
No.
Okay. Because it's a small town. It was a very small town. And we could accidentally, and I actually averted a situation like that with regards to today's issue, where somebody came up to me and started talking to me about it. And I go, wait a minute, is this coming before this board? And he goes, no, it's here in a minute. So wait, stop right there. I can't, I'm not, I says, well, we've only talked about what's in the public record. I said, okay, fine, that's it. Don't say anything more. I want to hear your opinion. And we stop it right there. But that way we could be a little bit better attuned and preserve our independence and our objectivity. I would think that it would be a good thing to do.
So be included both on any notification for planning and zoning board and neighborhood meetings? Because they use the same
Well, yeah,
list.
if it's an item that's going to come here, there's going to be a zoning change that you normally have to put out a mailer for 1,500 people, make it 1,507, just so we know that it's coming.
My only word of caution is you're doing it for a very good reason. You want to avoid an ex parte communication. If you can.
Exactly. An inadvertent one.
Right. So you wouldn't, obviously, when you see the listing of the public meetings or done by the developer, you don't want to go to those meetings, but you want to be advised of where the location is. So if somebody comes up to you and says, you could say, wait a minute, I really can't talk to you about that.
You get it, we get it the Friday before.
Exactly. And if we get it 13 days before, we could possibly avoid the situation. I've actually caught it more than once. But in that case, I've known about something coming up, just because I do. But in this particular, I didn't. I didn't know it was coming up. I was more focused on the project that came in before. And so I avoided those issues. But this one caught me by surprise, and I was able to stop it. But it's actually happened to me before a couple of times, when I was first on this board 8 years ago. So I think it would be a good idea that staff consider that, and I would like to make that recommendation as a board to staff to do so.
Anybody have any objections?
I don't have a problem with that. It just,
So
we will not get the packages.
No, not the package, just the same little notification.
Just
card. We have the address, so we know
Agenda,
it is.
basically.
No, we don't want the agenda, just the notice that this is coming, that tells you what the address is and where it is.
But for both the notice for the neighborhood meeting and for planning and zoning notice?
Yeah.
do you need to have the neighborhood meeting notice?
Well, my
No, I
concern,
don't think I need the neighborhood
are
meeting
you sure?
notice.
Because that does happen first, so they may approach you
It
before
could die
you,
in the process of after the
Good.
neighborhood meeting, so it's
Yeah.
when it's certainly going to be coming here.
for planning and zoning only.
Exactly. I think neighborhood meetings, I think it would be more of a problem for us if we're notified of it.
No, my only concern is that they may talk to you, a resident may talk to you earlier on before we even go to planning and zoning. And
Exactly.
you would not be aware that that will eventually, in the next few months, be a.
Well,
before
I
you.
caught a couple of those too. Hey, no,
Yeah.
I can't only talk about that. No.
Well, that's outside of the cone of silence anyways.
No, but it's, cone of silence drops upon advertising, isn't it? When does the cone of silence in Squirrel Gables drop?
Was it what?
When does the cone of silence drop?
Mr.
I
Cullen?
mean,
I
isn't it?
think it's when Maxwell Smart meets the, that's really.
Okay.
Well, okay, but there's an actual, there is.
Make a motion to adjourn?
So,
No, wait a minute.
before we finish that, so we have a recommendation that Mr. Javier has brought forth, and I think there's consensus among the board to proceed that way.
Yes.
So, are you good with that?
I'm good.
Okay.
So can we make it an official vote and say that's what we'd like to do?
Well, I don't know if we would do an official vote. It's not an
You can
agenda
do it
item.
as a motion if you feel you need
Is-
to. You've given direction to staff, I assume
Can we do a
staff will
verbal,
comply.
is everybody in agreement, a yes or no, or anybody objects?
All
I
in
think you
favor?
can do it informally, or you could do a
I'll do it
motion.
with informally. That's fine. We can deal with it.
Okay.
Is everybody in favor of the
Yes.
recommendation? Yes?
Yes.
Anybody against?
I only hear 4 yeses. I did not hear the yes from that end.
Sue?
Nodded very
Loudly. She nodded loudly.
loudly.
It was a loud nod.
So, just for the record, the entire board is in agreement for that
5
recommendation.
members of the board tonight, not the entire board. We're missing 2 board
Present,
members.
the entire board present. All right, we have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Behar. We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, aye, aye.
Ay, 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 a la casa.
Thank you, everybody.